live stream could be started, please, Jen. Good morning, everyone. Before I formally start the meeting, I will go to each subcommittee member to confirm that they can hear and be heard. This is a legal requirement for me to do so under the Local Authorities and Police and Crime Panels Coronavirus Flexibility of Local Authority and Police and Crime Panel Meetings, England and Wales Regulations 2020. So if you could verbally confirm that you are able to hear me, and I will in turn respond that I can hear you. Where practicable, please also have your video switched on so that you can be seen by other members in attendance and the public watching. First of all, Councillor Polly Andrews, we know there is a problem with, so we will come back to her later. And Councillor Jeremy Milne.
Yes, thank you. I can see and hear you, Chair.
And I can see and hear you. Thank you, Councillor Milne. I'd also like to request that officers who will be present throughout the meeting can also confirm that they can be hear and be heard. That's Caroline Marshall, who's our clerk.
Chair, she's just making contact with Councillor Andrews.
Councillor Selden, yes, I can hear and see you. I am trying to resolve Councillor Andrews' access issue at the moment.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Emma Bowell, Authority.
Sorry, Emma, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I can hear and see you, Chair.
And I can hear and see you, Emma. Thank you. Alice McAlpine, our legal advisor.
I can see and hear you, Chair.
And you. Good morning. And Jen Priest, our technical support officer.
Yeah, I can hear and see you, Chair. Thank you.
I will now run through the etiquette for the meeting. The council is video and audio streaming this meeting live on the internet and making an official recording. The recording forms part of the public record of the meeting and will be available on the council's website. Please note that while it's only a legal requirement that you have your audio switched on, it is the council's preference, where you are able to do so, to also have your video switched on. Please remember that what you say and do in this meeting has a global reach and your words and actions should be chosen carefully. Can I also remind members to ensure that they are wearing their headsets while listening and speaking during the meeting? This will ensure that the audio quality of the highest possible quality and background noise is significantly reduced. As these are extraordinary circumstances, there are some additional points for members and officers to be aware of. As part of our meeting etiquette and in line with our normal committee practices, all microphones apart from mine will be placed on mute at the start and during the meeting. I will then run through the agenda in the customary way. When you wish to speak, please use the hand button against your name in the participants lists, which should be on the right of your screen, or if it's not, it's at the bottom of mine under the participants list. I will then invite you to speak in order of the hands being raised. Please remember to unmute yourself and speak and mute yourself when you have finished. Please do not raise your physical hand, as I do not wish to miss anyone who may wish to speak. Please note that the chat facility has been switched off to ensure that members' contributions can be offered through the spoken voice and for the public record. Please also ensure that mobile devices are switched off to prevent interference with the audio and video systems. If any attendee loses contact with the meeting, it will be paused to ascertain if the connection can be restored quickly. If it is not possible to recover the connection within a reasonable amount of time, the meeting will continue as long as a quorum of committee members remains able to be here and be heard. If you plan to leave the meeting before the end, please indicate this in advance. Where the committee members are required to vote on an item, I will ask each committee member in turn to indicate verbally whether they are for, against, or abstaining. The result of the roll call will only be recorded in the minutes of the meeting where there is a requirement to record a named vote. If a committee member has not been present for the whole of the discussion on an item due to technical failure, then they should not vote on that item. Are there any questions before we continue? I see none. Thank you. I will now, it says now formally open the meeting. No, I won't. I will formally now adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes while we are saying, see if Councillor Andrews can Right. Apologies for those watching on YouTube for the slight delay. We have now managed to rescue Councillor Andrews from whichever ether she'd been lost in. So if I may now confirm, Councillor Andrews, that you can see and be heard.
I can see and hear you, Chairman. Thank you.
And are you? Thank you, Councillor Andrews, and welcome back to humanity. So I will now formally start the meeting. After item 1 on the agenda, are there any apologies for absence?
Councillor Elizabeth Foxton tendered her apologies, and Councillor Milne is substituting for her.
Thank you, Caroline. That covers item 2, which is name substitutes. Thank you very much. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests to be declared for items on the agenda today? Could you do this, please, by raising your virtual hand, and I will then speak to notify the meeting which item you have an interest in and the nature of that interest. Are there any declarations from members? Councillor Andrews, Councillor Milne?
No.
I see none. Thank you. So on to item 4, which is an application for the grant of a premises licence in respect of the Eldorado Festival, Eastnor Deer Park, Eastnor Ledbury, HR 81RD under the Licensing Act 2003. This is to consider an application for a licence for the Eldorado Festival at the Deer Park. Licensing, need to confirm that Mr. Ed Hogan has indicated that he will not be present.
That's correct. He said he has pre-existing meetings, but he's happy for the hearing to go ahead because in his representation, he's addressed all his issues.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to the presentations. First of all, is Emma will speak on behalf of the licensing authority. Then we will ask if members have any questions for Emma on that presentation. So Emma, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we're here today to for an application to grant a premises licence in respect of Eldorado Festival at Eastnor Deer Park in Ledbury. The recommendation is that the subcommittee determine the application with a view to promote the licensing objectives in the overall interest of the local community. They should give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, representations, including any supporting information presented by all parties, the guidance issued to local authorities under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, and the Herefordshire Council Statement of Licensing Policy of 2020 to 2025. There are a number of options open to the subcommittee. One would be to grant the licence subject to conditions that are consistent with the operating schedule accompanying the application and the mandatory conditions set out in the Licensing Act 2003. Grant the licence subject to modified conditions to that of the operating schedule. To exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities. To refuse to specify a person in the licence as the premises supervisor, or to reject the application. The reasons for these recommendations is that it ensures compliance with the Licensing Act 2003. The application for a grant of the premises licence has received relevant representations and is therefore brought before the subcommittee for determination. The details of the application are: the applicant is the Out of Nowhere Limited, agent is Rob Dudley at We Are the Fair Limited. We received the application on the 12th of January 2001. And the 28-day consultation started on the 13th of January 21, concluding on the 9th of February.
Sorry, can I just stop you there? I mean, you did say 2001.
Sorry, 2021. Sorry, it's early Monday morning. Okay, so the application Appendix 1 requests the grant of a premises licence to allow up to 19,999 people at any one time and the following licensable activities during the hours shown. So plays, indoors and outdoors, films, indoors, outdoors, live music, indoors and outdoors, recorded music, indoors and outdoors, performance of dance, indoors and outdoors, anything similar to those above, which again is indoors and outdoors. Thursday from 10 a.m. until 2 a.m, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. until 4 a.m. Late night refreshment, indoors and outdoors, Thursday from 11 p.m. till 2 a.m, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 11 p.m. till 4 a.m. Sale and supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises, Thursday midday until 2 a.m, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. until 3:30 a.m. Just a note for the committee members that late night refreshment is only applicable between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m, hence why it's starting at 11 p.m. in the evening. No representations have been received from the responsible authorities. One relevant representation has been received from a member of the public that the licensing authority has accepted as being relevant, and that can be found at Appendix 2. The premises was first licensed in 2016 under the name Cirque du Soleil El Dorado. The license was granted on the 18th of February 2016 for a one-year license, which classes an occasional premises license. A permanent premises license was granted under the name Cirque du Soleil El Dorado on the 16th of January 2017, following a 28-day consultation period where conditions requested by Environmental Health were agreed. On the 1st of March 2018, an application was received to transfer the premises license to Out of Nowhere Limited and to change the premises name to El Dorado Festival. This was granted along with an application to vary the designated premises supervisor, DPS, on the 14th of March 2018. On the 2nd of July 2018, a noise complaint was received by the Council's licensing department from a member of the public, which can be found at Appendix 3, and this was passed to Environmental Health. On the 20th of November 2018, the El Dorado team wrote the letter to the complainant addressing the noise issues, and a copy was also received by the Council's licensing department and can be found at Appendix 4. On the 28th of June 2019, a license was granted following an application for a minor variation. The purpose of the application was to update the premises plans in regards to the sound system layout and stage positioning as agreed with Environmental Health. 42 noise complaints were received by the Council's Environmental Health team between 2016 and 2019. No noise complaints were received in 2016, one received in 2017, 40, that's 40, in 2018, and one in 2019. The noise complaints in 2018 came from residents of the Ledbury area, and the reason being was that the speakers at the festival were directed towards this area. This issue was addressed to the 2019 festival, and as a result, only one noise complaint was received. Due to the COVID pandemic, the festival did not go ahead in 2020. It is understood at the time of the report being published, the premises license holder will be looking to surrender their current license should this application be granted. Any decision may have an impact on the local community. There are no equality issues in relation to the content of this report. This report has human rights implications for both the premise license holder and the residents from the local neighbourhood. Article 8I of the European Convention of Human Rights provides that everyone has the right to respect for his or her private and family life in his or her home, which does include business premises. There are unlikely to be any financial implications for the licensing authority at this time. As relevant representations have been received, the subcommittee must determine the application under section 3.5.7c of the Herefordshire Council Constitution. The representations must relate to licensing objectives, and the subcommittee must determine the likely effect of the grant of the premise license on the promotion of those licensing objectives. The licensing authority must have regard to the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives: the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm in exercising exemptions under the Act. The subcommittee should be aware of a number of stated cases which have appeared before the administrative court and are binding on the licensing authority, and your legal advisor can advise you further on those. Schedule 5 of the Licensing Act 2003 gives a right of appeal, which states, decision to grant premises license or impose conditions. Appeals should be made to Magistrates Court and must be made within 21 days, beginning with the day on which the appellant was notified by the licensing authority of the decision appealed against. There is little risk associated with the decision at this time, and the legislation allows for that right of appeal to the Magistrates Court within 21 days. All responsible authorities and members of the public living in Herefordshire have been consulted. Appendices 1 to 4 can be found at the back of this report, and I understand there have been supplements issued post the report being published. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emma. Let me get rid of this Thank you, Emma. Are there any questions from either Councillor Milne or Councillor Andrews on the report?
Not at the moment, thank you, Chairman.
Nor I for the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Caroline, you've got your hand raised.
Yes, I don't know if the gentleman's disappeared, but we did have a person called David in the waiting room, and I was just wondering if the applicants were aware of who that would be, because they're not on the list of people on the notice of intent, so we would not admit them unless we know who they are.
I'm not, Chair.
Mr. Dudley?
Is it David Littlewood by any chance?
We have no way of checking. The chat is only one way. That's from us to them. They can't respond, so we have no way of checking who it is.
I'll just
Have you got a way
share
of-
YouTube
have-
link with them instead of this one.
Have you got a telephone number you can give them a call on?
Chair, to be clear, he wasn't on the notice of intent
Oh, okay.
to appear,
Ah.
so he can't really participate in the meeting,
No.
irrespective of whether he is part
Understood.
of the applicant or not.
Okay, I have one question going forward with this one. Up until I think 2013, the Deer Park was the home of the Big Chill Festival, and I'm just wondering from our licensing department point of view if we'd had any record of complaints about noise from that going from 2000 up to 2013.
I can't see any on our system, though environmental health may have on theirs, which I haven't got access to.
Okay, the reason I ask is that I believe their numbers were far higher than those being requested by the El Dorado Festival. Would that be correct?
That's correct, Chair, yes. The Big Chill was licensed, which obviously it's now been surrendered, so it's not licensed anymore, for up to 39,999.
Okay, and that's the same site.
The Eastnor Deer Park.
Thank you.
Chair, as you're aware, clearly that would be information only, and you wouldn't be able to take that, even if we were able to confirm that. It wouldn't be relevant to this application. You're
I
considering.
understand that what I'm interested in, Alison, I understand your legal position on this one, but the site does have a record of holding large festivals, and I think that's the point that I'm just trying to establish whether this is the same.
I appreciate that, Chair. I'm
Thank you.
just keeping you on the.
We have a number of representatives of the applicants here. I don't know whether you all wish to speak or whether you'd like to speak in any particular order, but can I ask you to organise that amongst yourselves without me asking you?
Gladly, Chair. As the lawyer for the applicant, Chair, perhaps I can start. Is it our turn, by the way? I don't want to jump the gun.
I don't think we have any other representations from the licensing authority or the trading standards, so I think it's your turn, Mr. Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as I said, I'm the solicitor for the applicant. We may appear to have turned up a bit mob-handed. The reason for that is simply we appreciate the one representation is about noise, and hopefully we will be able to address you on that point. But a festival is a complex beast, as you'll appreciate, and we didn't want to come to a hearing for a new license, albeit we've run the festival for several years, without having the right people here in case you had any other questions as well. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask my colleagues to just introduce themselves one by one and explain what their sort of area of expertise is, and then we'll get into the meat of the matter, if that's acceptable.
Yes, please, Mr. Grimsey, thank you. That would be most kind. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. My name is Rob Dudley. And during the live phase of the festival, I act as the event safety advisor.
Good morning. My name is Yasmin, and during the live phase of the event, I act as the event director, and I lead on the safety advisory group planning for the event.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Plyer. I'm the proposed designated premises supervisor and have been since 2018 for this event.
I think, Mr. Miller, you're the outstanding.
Apologies. Yes, good morning, everyone. My name's Rob Miller from F1 Acoustics. I'm the event's acoustic consultant. I look after the sound control on the site during the live events and produce all the paperwork before and after the event to do with noise.
Great, thank you very much. Okay.
So there you go. Enough experts to answer hopefully any question you may have. But we're obviously here because of concerns about noise, which is a bit of a theme with this particular location. And I'm grateful to Emma for her history of the applications and the previous iterations of Eldorado. Clearly, most years, given the size of the event, there pretty much been no or absolutely minimal noise complaints, which I think is a credit to the organisers and the way they work with the authorities and indeed the local residents. 2018 was problematic, and in a moment I'm going to ask Yasmin to talk a little bit more detail about that. But I think, unlike a sort of typical pub or bar, you know, a festival is a very dynamic beast. Every year things change. You are somewhat dependent upon the topography, the location of stages, the direction of stages, the type of music that's being played, even the wind direction. And these things have to be monitored dynamically at the time and also reviewed at the end of a festival. And I think hopefully what you can see is, apart from 2018, those things have been done properly in accordance with the correct sort of practices and in dialogue with the Safety Advisory Group, and particularly Environmental Health. And it's very pleasing and not surprising, I have to say, that Environmental Health have not objected to the application, because we've been working with them all the way through on this. And that's not to belittle the objectors' concerns, and I'm not going to use his name because it's never been disclosed to us, so I don't want to sound impersonal about it, but we are concerned about him because we do not want him to have any issues if the event goes ahead this year. Perhaps it might be the right time to ask Yasmin to just address you on a little bit of the history, please, and put your mind at rest as to 2021. Yasmin, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so I just thought it'd be useful to talk in a little bit more detail about 2018 into 2019 and explain why maybe we had so many complaints that year. So during 2018, we did undergo quite a bit of a site redesign, and we also added a new stage, which was in a new area of the site and actually operated under a temporary event notice rather than the existing premises license. That stage is now included as part of this new application. That year, to direct to the site, to our noise complaint line, we received 15 complaints, 15, over the course of the weekend. We did send our noise consultants out to check the levels at those locations and found that we were within the levels we had prescribed in the license. However, the Monday after the event in 2018, we were made aware by the council of the significant number of complaints that they had also been receiving to people who perhaps did not have our direct noise line to contact. And those were primarily focused in the Ledbury area. So once we'd received that, we went to a debrief SAG with Herefordshire Council. We talked through why this has occurred, which include the directionality of the stages. And we talked about how we can address that moving into 2019. We then received the request to review the licence in November, and you were made aware of the letter that we responded with to the complainant in that situation. And we created a plan that we implemented in 2019, including a change of the site layout and directionality of stages, improved noise modelling, additional on-site resource with sound technicians and noise consultants, as well as additional monitoring points focused around some of the areas that were receiving significant complaints in 2018. Myself and Kate, who's one of the event organisers, also did a significant amount of resident kind of interaction and community engagement. So we widened our resident litter reach. We put up posters in Ledbury, giving people the noise complaint number, and we had 2 face-to-face meetings where we invited a wider group of residents to come and meet us in 2 different local sort of cafes on 2 different dates, so we could address complaints directly. During 2019, we only received 1 complaint to the noise line, and we also received a commendation from the local Ledbury reporter to say thank you for turning it down. That was made public on their website. And we also received commendation from the council about the significant reduction in complaints that we'd received with regard to noise. In addition, we received direct communications from some of the residents that we had been in email communication with, also thanking us for significantly reducing the noise. As Andy said, events of this nature are dynamic. There's lots of variable factors, particularly around noise, that include things relating to the weather. Hopefully the response that we've showed to the noise complaints from 2018 to 2019 demonstrates our dedication to working with the council as well as the local residents to make sure our event is a successful one for the local community as well as people attending. I'll hand back to Andy.
Sorry, Ms. Grimsey, you're on mute.
Apologies. Thank you. Thank you, Yasmin. Perhaps I can just briefly touch on the resident-specific objections, because it's important to deal with them precisely. I think they can be divided into 4 different points. The first one is that the noise surveys and comments to date don't take into account the fact that windows will be open during the summer months, and as the event is planned for July, that would, on the face of it, be a fair point. Now, we do have Rob Miller, who is one of those scary acoustic experts who talks in a language that many of us don't really understand, but I wanted him to be here just in case you did have any specific queries about his noise report, or indeed issues to do with doors and windows being open during summer. What I can say absolutely categorically is that the noise projections and predictions have been based upon doors and windows, well, windows certainly being open, and therefore we are perfectly confident that we will comply with the music noise level as specified in the application and as agreed with Environmental Health. The second point is that there's no noise monitoring locations in Ledbury. There is one on Oakland Drive at least, and of course this is a dynamic issue, and therefore as we get closer to the event, presuming the license is granted, we will work with Environmental Health and, if necessary, local residents to adapt those monitoring locations for obvious reasons. The third point the resident makes is that the times, particularly the 4 AM finish time, is not acceptable. Well, that's very much in line with what we've practiced before, which is on the existing license. So there's no change there. That's the only point I'd make about that. And his last point is about public rights of way. Well, with the greatest respect, and we fully appreciate as a festival, we're going to cause some disturbance and maybe block things for local residents for a little while whilst we're there. The issue of public rights of way per se isn't really a licensing objective related matter. I hope your legal advisor would agree on that. If she's nodding, thank you. If it was to do with blocking emergency vehicles or something like that, that's a completely separate matter, but that is not the case. So, you know, we as you know, we wrote through licensing to the resident. We are more than happy to meet with him at any stage to discuss any specific concerns. And it was quite pleasing that when we sent our response on the 18th of February via licensing, there was, I would guess, a response from him on the same day saying, I just want to clarify, I'm happy for the festival to go ahead, I've just got concerns about it. So it's a question of solving a problem rather than having an outright objection to the application. Can I just direct you very briefly to some of the conditions that we have already agreed would be placed on the license if the license was granted, and are very much in line with what has been on the license before. And I know Mr. Spriggs very well and Emma quite well, and I know they are strict and always have been about these things, because it's important that licensees comply with their responsibilities under various regulations. And these are some pretty strict conditions, I have to say. And the first one is condition 4, which requires that the event safety management plan has to be signed off by the safety advisory group. That's the first thing, they have to agree to it. And secondly, that signed off event safety management plan has to be complied with during the festival, which effectively incorporates the whole of the event safety management plan as a condition into the license. That is a very, very large undertaking. So that's very, very strong reassurance, I would suggest, to the authorities and indeed to the subcommittee today, that we have to agree the whole text and then comply with it as conditions on the license. Secondly, that between 2 in the morning and 4 in the morning, noise will not be audible or discernible effectively where people are sleeping, which is an added criterion, which of course should provide some reassurance. Thirdly, that there are specific music noise levels, again, that have been agreed between our acoustic experts and environmental health, based on different dates and times, but over which we cannot go. And fourthly, and perhaps most importantly, there's a noise hotline whenever regulated entertainment is taking place, which is manned and again is dynamic and reacting to the situation as it's happening. So in summary, Chair and members of the licensing subcommittee, we hope that we have addressed the issues in the representation and that we can continue to be a partner who learns from the odd issues that arise and continue to be a successful festival in Herefordshire. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to add at this stage. As I said, we're really here to answer any questions you may have, rather than spend 5 hours explaining what's happening at the festival, but clearly we can if you want us to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grimsey. Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add to what Yasmin and Andy have said, that the learnings that were taken from 2018 into 2019 have obviously been incorporated into this application, and with it being for a larger site layout with additional stages, Rob Miller has been engaged to produce some revised noise modelling, which he's done, which Andy alluded to, demonstrates that we're fully confident that we can comply with the conditions which specify noise levels.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else from the applicant's team? No. Questions from members? I have one for Mr. Miller. Your modelling of sound and the way sound travels down the valley toward Ledbury, are you taking into account all frequency ranges that may emanate from the stages? Because I have a certain amount of knowledge about the way sound travels up and down valleys.
Yes, certainly. So we've taken, for this modelling exercise, we've taken the noise levels that we measured in 2019 at the festival and used those as an input sound source for the noise model. That's taken in 3rd octave bands all the way from the sort of lowest, or from low frequency noise at 50 hertz all the way up to 5,000 hertz, which, although audible human hearing goes up to 20,000, those high frequencies attenuate a lot quicker. So although we've stopped at 5,000 hertz, they're not likely, anything higher than that isn't likely to go much beyond the site boundary anyway. So obviously, if we're dealing with this site in particular, a lot of the receptors are quite far away from the festival site itself because it's quite a spread out area. That's all in 3rd octave bands as well. So I can look at the detailed modelling, which does have low frequency content, and we can look at that in 3rd octave band and see what the noise levels are at the receptors in those frequencies.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask, the direct noise line and the consultation with local residents seem to have been very successful. I assume you'll be doing that again this year.
Yes, we will. We'll advertise the phone number in a local letter, and then it will be live whilst the event is live.
Right. And could I also, just for my own information, really, presumably this event is designed and attracts younger people.
Yeah,
I can't see anyone of my age group going, for example.
We do have quite a popular older audience, particularly on the Sunday, because we tend to have a heritage live act, like we've had Sister Sledge and Kool and the Gang before. But yes, it's predominantly sort of 18 to 27-year-old is the core of the demographic.
Right, thank you.
You are welcome to join though, if you want to.
Well, Sister Sledge are headlining at Nostock this year. I thought you just get that plug in while I'm on there. Councillor Milne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have no particular technical knowledge in which to of how sound behaves by which to challenge Mr. Miller's very competent report, and I'm impressed by the learning exercise the applicants have evidently taken from previous experience, particularly of the 2018 event where clearly there was a spike in complaints around noise, and it does seem that you've addressed the sort of natural amphitheatrical nature of the topography at Eastnor Park pretty well. My question actually isn't going to be so much in respect of the noise, but taking up on Mr. Grimsey's point about the moving nature of the beast, that as the application is for doubling the size of the attendee figure, while I recognise that's still smaller than events historically at Eastnor Park, that we don't generate complaints from other areas. And while I recognise that it's not necessarily a licensing objective to preserve that those public rights of way accesses across the park, where a site is as large as this. I mean, an application site is the red line boundary encompasses quite a large area of the park, and there is inevitably a degree of permeability of that boundary because your application is for alcohol on and off premises, and clearly with sound, site boundary is irrelevant anyway. But if I could be reassured that that there are no sort of public safety implications in the management of those footpaths across the park, if they're not actually to be formally closed during the event, I think that would be helpful. Perhaps I should say no more at this point. I don't know whether we're strictly tied to 3 minutes limit, and I probably got close to it, Chair, anyways.
I'm not strict.
We are, most of our meetings are.
Unlike some. Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Milne, in answer to your question with regards to public safety and the public rights of way access, it's obviously something that we've thought a lot about. Previously, when the festival's been operating at a smaller capacity, those rights of way have been maintained, and we've had positions at sort of either end of the footpath, and we've allowed public access, and we've sort of monitored the public on the few occasions that they use those footpaths, and we know when they've arrived and departed. However, due to the increase in size and scale, moving forward, it's likely that we will be applying through the proper channels and associations to have a temporary suspension of those public rights of way during the sort of the key build and live phases of the festival, to keep that disruption to a minimum. But that's, yeah, to be truthful, that's something that we will be looking to implement going forward.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
Are there any other points, questions from anybody in the room before we adjourn? I see none. Okay, thanks everybody. Subcommittee will now adjourn to discuss the application, and we'll be back, and I will think we can do this in about 20 minutes. So it's now 10:45. We will reconvene at around 11:05. You may remain in the meeting if you wish to. I'd like to formally request now that our decision runs as follows. We have heard from the licensing authority, the applicant, and the public representatives who made representations in writing. We note the community engagement and the availability of staff and the hotline for noise for virtually the whole of the Ledbury area. And we also note that the Safety Advisory Group will be signing off the management plan before the event. So that being the case, we grant the license as applied for. Thank you for your time. Before I formally close the meeting, can I ask the Democratic Services officers that the live stream be stopped?